Super stoked this finally happened, and we're going to repeat it. As I mentioned as I mentioned in the description of the event, um, Aubrey contacted me originally about his services, which I most definitely need. And as he and I were talking, I was sharing with him, one of the most common things that people bring up in intention setting for ceremonies is something around abundance and prosperity. And I find typically when I'm chatting with them later in like post integration calls, usually it's just either a weird relationship with money, or they just somebody like me who grew up with a poor black child growing up in the hood, quite literally. Money was something never discussed in our household. Um, my parents, there was no like intergenerational wealth, nothing like that. So I was one of the people that just grew up outside of the world of how money works. And as I got more abundant in life, I slowly had to kind of take on the responsibility of figuring a lot of that out. And I myself have just jumped from one, whatever they call it in our culture. Um, what do you that thing? An economic, group to another. Yeah, so it's
Hmm.
opened up this whole new other area of needing to understand money in a way that I didn't before. So when Aubrey and I were talking and he was sharing with me what he was doing, he brought up wanting to integrate his work into the community more and help people because he understood the same thing that I was just sharing with you. So that's why we're doing this. Some people might choose to actually want to work with him. He's going to explain that. Um, he does it in a way that's really accessible for anybody, no matter where you are. And I will tell all of you who don't know Aubrey that I've known him for like 10 years or so. Several people in our community that have benefited greatly already, even from one conversation with him regarding finances. And a few of them, one yesterday, just told me that they were following up on some of the things that Aubrey shared and that they were going to be recontacting him. So that said, I am going to mute myself and let Aubrey take it away.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm so excited to see everyone here. I'm really honored. I'm going to share some slides occasionally, but mostly it's going to be me talking. And as Tony said, I don't look at the chat because I want to keep my connection to you tuned in, and so then we have time at the end. So thank you once again. Thank you so much for being here. All right. Is that coming through, Spirit of Money?
Yep, you're fine.
All right. Okay. Well, what are we doing here? I consider this a ceremony like many other ceremonies, and the most important, and if we only did this, um, fundamental thing we can do, and that I am doing right now, is offering gratitude. Thank you for all of creation. Thank you for life. Thank you for myself. Thank you for each of you. Thank you for spirit that is consciousness that underlies everything and is knowing itself and is me and is you. I'm grateful. And I start all of my work with the name of my practice, with this invocation. And so I'll do it now. And this, I did ask Tony's permission and guidance on using this because I understand where it comes from, the spiritual tradition that it comes from, and I would only do so with the greatest respect and permission. Health in the body, peace in the spirit, love in the heart. It is this that we wish for ourselves, and it is this that we wish for all our sisters and our brothers. Health in the body, peace in the spirit, love in the heart. Open paths. All right. Thank you. So anytime you're talking about money, um, as Tony said, I am a financial advisor. And so this is one of the agreements I have to make. My intention is to give. It actually, I was in a position of desperate need. And when I reached out for help, I'm going to talk about it just a little bit. The people I found either couldn't help me, didn't help me, or they didn't really want to do what I needed, and yet they took my money anyway, which that would have been fine if they actually helped me. And so my primary intention is to give and to help and to be the person that I needed at that time as a start and grow in my ability to be the person that other people need. And that includes everything from, pro bono community work, paid work, it includes everything, but the foundation of my intention is giving. Since I am a financial advisor, I have to make clear that this is not financial advice. What financial advice is, where I know everything about a person's situation, their statements, their balances, their insurance, and then I can make a very specific recommendation. I recommend you do this at this time, and I'm legally obligated to give that advice in their best interests. And so this is not that, because I'm not in your business, I'm not in your life. This isn't financial advice, but I intend it to be very, very useful and powerful and to help guide you, as I said, the way I wish I had been. So that is my agreement. So some of you know me. Some of you might know me from working a 9-to-5 job with me. Some of you may know me from, like Abby, we met at a conference in Cincinnati for people who are into financial independence. Some of you know me just as friends. But I wanted, however you know me, or even if you're just meeting me, to know a little about who I am. So to the world, I present as a tall, white man, cis, hetero, basically as privileged as anyone could ever be. And I'm sure I don't even comprehend all of the ways. And at the same time, my ancestry includes, from my mother's ancestry, Sicilians who were Jewish, who were persecuted by the Inquisition in the late 15th century and converted to Catholicism under torture. And it includes, from my father's side, Apache Chiricahua, and they went through some hard times for sure, and still are. And as a kid growing up, I lived in rural Mexico. My dad was an anthropologist. My mom was a modern dancer. My dad's passed away. My mom's still alive. So I grew up in rural Mexico, no running water, a 2-room adobe house, had to pull water up from a well. My job as a 4-year-old was taking care of 3 cows and taking them out to pasture and bringing them back in. And then I was transported from that when I turned 6 to Chevy Chase, Maryland, which is a really posh suburb of DC. Suddenly I was in that world. And it was striking, the difference in wealth, the difference in resources, and yet people lived lives in both places full of frustration and joy and love and children and parents and, fighting with each other and having feuds and all of it. So I saw the similarities and I saw the differences. And I lived for other periods of years in other countries like Finland, traveling in South America extensively with my father as an anthropologist. So I had a little different perspective than just someone, some of the other people I grew up with in the States. In terms of education, my schooling was as an engineer and mechanical engineer. I went to MIT, I got a master's degree. I was a researcher in the particle physics world, smashing atoms together and seeing what comes out and designing the magnetic resonance chambers that make that possible. And then I went to work for big companies, 2 of them, for the last 20 years. And my last day with that corporation was yesterday. 20 years, 10 months, 4 days.
Wow, I'm really glad this is like, we're getting you like the first day after that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And because I'm a nerd, I calculated the number of work days and it was 5,175. And on each of those days, I was required to keep track of my time down to the 10th of an hour. So I have the receipts. So that part of my life has finished. And while I was in that world, I was leading basically businesses within businesses where I had a product family. I was flying and winning customers, and we were in production. We were doing research and development. And the job I just left, I was an associate director of program management for research and development And I think the company is, in the Fortune 50, which means one of the biggest 50 companies in the United States market. Big company. So like I like to joke with my friend Steven, when people say, oh, it's the man keeping you down, like I am the man. I have been inside that world, deep inside that world, and I know it. But at the same time, I'm not of that world. And that conflict was very challenging, and it resulted in depression and anxiety and insomnia and medical leave and many other symptoms because my body, my heart, my soul was experiencing the dissonance. About 10 years ago, I received a reading from a woman who's now a dear friend. She was connected to the native people of Central California, and she offered to do a reading for me. I had never had any reading of any kind, and I don't think I have since. She has said she has never pulled this card for anyone before or since. So that's interesting. And what this card is the threefold path of the Eastern Shield. But sorry, before I go on, I just want to honor my mom and dad, who you see in that picture. That's me, the little kid. And then my dear partner, Lauren, celebrated 6 years together last November. And just for that, I'm the luckiest Aubrey that ever could be. And I love you very much, Lauren. So this card, I didn't even realize it at the time, but my life was about to change. And there's a lot to this sacred path, but what emerged over a period of years is one of the three paths, and that is understanding the white man's coin. And what this medicine path means by that is understanding that money is energy. And that the path to illumination, to enlightenment, to truth, if you are on this path, is understanding money as energy in all its forms. And so that's what I've been doing. And first, I helped myself. After my divorce, I was more than $90,000 in debt. And I was living in a one-bedroom apartment with 2 kids. So it was, and I had them 50% of the time. They were with their mom half the time. But it was their bunk bed and my bed. And that was it. And from there, I was able to pay off that debt within 4 years, increase my net worth at that time from minus 90,000 to somewhere in the 300,000 to 400,000 range, and then go from there. And I'll share, about that specifically. But then other people wanted help. And so I helped them, just as a friend. And then other people wanted help. And so I started doing financial coaching since 2019. And then people wanted more help. And so I started my business, which is now a registered investment advisor, Open Path Financial. And that's been a California registered investment advisor since April of 2024. So I'm going to say more about what money is, but I wanted to take a moment and ask you, and I'm asking myself the same question, why are you here right now? Why did you show up? It can be any answer you want, but I'm going to give 20 seconds. And if you can, make it as simple as possible. One word is best. Why are you here? So please feel free to write that down. If you don't want to write it down, that's fine. Keep it. Remember, it's important.
And just for the spirit of it, Aubrey, I'll read you a few that are showing up. Sky rope support, Manny is to restabilize. I'm down with both of those. move beyond burnout. Yeah, Renee,
Mm,
absolutely. And then Samsara wrote from instability to generosity in finances. Patricia wrote make big life moves. And Kim, I need help with managing my finances and I want to be more abundant with my money. Yeah, I won't read all of them, but the last one I will read, which is I think for most of us, Jesse Brooks wrote to heal my relationship with money.
mm, ouch. Mm. Ouch is a native word from South America, similar to aho or amen. Let it be. I shared a little about my intention, but I was fully present doing that work with you right then. And what came through for me was to share the experience of learning to ask and receive as level one. And the next level that I'm experiencing is that when other people ask me and are able to receive, that is a gift to me. And I didn't understand that before. So my intention is to experience that more, the gift of being able to receive requests and give. Well, this is if we want to say, the core of what we're doing or what I intend to do, this is it. What is money? Based on my study, you will come to your own conclusion. But from my study, money is concentrated life force. It's a technology that facilitates communication, exchange, collaboration, specialization, trade, and like any technology, it can be used in different ways. But this is a woman in Bali who my friend Amy Minkley introduced me to, and she helps women who have gone through divorce. And in that country, in her culture, um, it's very difficult for a woman to be accepted back into their community after a divorce, and it's common for them not to be able to see their children. And she wasn't able to see her children for 12 years after her divorce. And so now she helps uh, women who are in similar situations. And I can help this person. Money isn't the only technology at work there, but it's a big one. So if we stay on what is money, a lot of times we think of it like this, like, oh, it's paper or it's numbers on a screen. But if we start with the premise that it's energy, that it's concentrated life force, think of electricity or light or even mass that exists in a gravity field, which is created by mass itself. That's you on the earth right now. Energy or money, it can be collected, it can be dispersed, it can be dammed up just like a river. It can flow, it can leak away, it can be concentrated, magnified, it can be transformed. And this is important. It magnifies the nature and consciousness of the one who wields it. So if you've had negative experiences, whether directly or indirectly, with money, it's likely that the people in power, in control, and using that money were not in alignment with your own level of consciousness. It's obvious maybe, but part of my mission is to empower you to take that power for yourself. And really, you're using it all the time already, just to be more conscious and skillful. And so, because of that tremendous power, that's why money is worthy of study and practice and skill and respect to me. I thought this was probably important. I wasn't going to save it till the end. How to have more money. And this is something the financial industry doesn't want you to know. Money is very simple. Investing is very simple. Managing your finances is very simple. And part of their business, it's sort of like industrial food and big pharma. Industrial food creates the idea of nutritionism and tells you you need this vitamin and that vitamin, and only their specially formulated breakfast cereal has it. And then, oh, well, if you get sick, we have these medicines. There may be a few side effects. The parallels with the business of finance are very similar to that. And yet eating can be much simpler than that and very healthful. And you can even grow the food yourself. You can prepare the food yourself. So that's what I focus on with money. My goal with every person that I help is for them to graduate from me. If a new situation comes along and they want to ask me a question, then that's what I'm here for. But that's the goal. The very simple formula, and I'm sorry if it's too obvious, is earn money, save money, spend money, and invest money. And each of those, you can go very deep on each of those, and I do. But the place to start is, if you want something to change, something has to change. If there's something in your life, specifically around money, that you want to change, a very common experience for me, and I embodied this myself, as I say, oh, well, I want to have more savings, or I want to be able to afford a new set of tires when my car tires are bald and I'm skidding off the road. Okay, like I can't change that, and I can't change that, and I can't like, you just start running up against this wall of I can'ts, and that has to go. I don't believe there are any fixed expenses. Everything is negotiable. Everything is changeable. You may not choose to. That's up to you. But you really can. And for me, for example, it was moving from a 3-bedroom house to a 1-bedroom apartment, at that time. That was a big change. And what I would recommend, take an inventory, pick a few big things you want to change. And I'm not suggesting you do all of them, but brainstorm a few big ones. Write them down, pick one. That's what you're going to work on for the next year. At the same time, you'll probably have lots of little things that come to mind. Feel free to sprinkle those in. If energy comes up around something that you can take care of quickly, like, oh, my car insurance, maybe I should call 2 places instead of just paying the one that just raised my rate by $300 every 6 months. Sure, that's a small one. But by picking a big change, you can project, where will I be at the end of the year? And what am I going to do in the next 3 months, and the 3 months after that, and the 3 months after that? From there, take that and you say, okay, that's a long way away. What about in the next 2 weeks? All right, what about this week? What about today? And every day, I write down something that I'm going to do to improve my money life towards that goal at the end of the year. On the next day, I write down whether I did it or not, or what I did. And this is very, very important. Even if you didn't do the thing, write down that you didn't do the thing. Notice what comes up. If there's any shame or guilt or blame, I always do that. I can't. Why can't I just? Please leave that behind. If you didn't do the thing, you didn't do the thing. It's okay to make observations. Like, this event came up, that happened. It's okay to come up with ideas if something would help in the future, if something similar happened. But writing down what you intend to do on a daily basis, and then recording whether you did it or not, without shame, without blame, without guilt, without any of that. Because I've seen it in, I don't know, probably 70 or 80 people, the transformation that has. So within each of those, connect like where you're going to, how to do it. What I did, and this was in 2011, I discovered the financial independence movement. At that time, it was this guy, Jacob Lund Fisker, who wrote a book called Early Retirement Extreme. He was living on lentils and bacon in a trailer in San Francisco for $7,500 a year. It was extreme, but it broke the mold of what I thought I had to do. And then I read a blog from a guy called Mr. Money Mustache, and he had a lot of interesting ideas. And then I read another blog. I'll be happy to put all these in references. J.L. Collins. He wrote a book, which some of you may know, Simple Path to Wealth. Great book. So I connected with ideas, with knowledge, with people. And you don't have to connect to the same ones that I did, but I'm happy to share those. And the next level was connecting with people who were a step ahead of me. So find someone who's gotten themselves out of debt. How did they do it? Connect with them, talk to them. I've just started to do more of that recently. I was really alone doing this, except for the friends that I helped directly. And I've started to reach out and meet people in person all across the country from the financial independence movement. And that's been amazing. So let's go.
I just want
How are we
to,
with time?
we're fine. And I want to interject just for a moment. I love that you frame this as really a ceremony because there's so many parallels. One that comes to mind for people that are involved in any kind of ongoing ceremony work is this idea of the real work being between the works, and that it's all about integration. And that parallel of writing down what your intention is, ideally daily, but whenever you think about it, and then simply being willing the next day to write down whether you did it or not. That's so similar to the ceremony work of just being in the observer mode, right? Of just watching your relationship with money and commitment and integrity and all those things without judgment. Because I would imagine over a period of a month or so, you would start to get a real sense of what your actual, maybe subconscious relationship with money and abundance and worthiness is, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's one of the, what you just described, Tony, it's one of the hardest things. So if, for example, if you have a credit card that you use for most of your purchases, or a debit card or a bank account, and you look through those, get a couple of colored markers, or if it's on your computer, use colors. Pick some colors, a color that feels good, a color that's and then a color that's like, yuck. Okay. Go through those. One of the hardest things is for people, myself included, when I did this, to not immediately want to jump in and fix. Oh, look how much I spent. I need to change that. I invite you to resist that urge. And as Tony said, just observe. And maybe those feelings come up, whatever they are, anger, shame, frustration, any feeling you can imagine, happiness, joy, gratitude. But allowing all of that information to come in without reacting, without feeling like you have to do something right then, that's where lasting change will come from, not just reactive change. And the most common dynamic that I see, if we think of money as energy, is leaks. That everyone's different, but they're bringing in money, and it's going to a few things that are very important. But then there's lots of little leaks, and there's reasons for each of them. But now that this person has experienced this thing, has held this thing, I invite them to let it go temporarily. And my example was cars. I just had to have a BMW like my boss had. He was at the particle physics lab. He was still a dear friend, and I introduced him to his wife. And I got a 3-year-old car. It was used. So I paid $25,000 instead of the $55,000 it was new, but I still had a $400 car payment for 5 years, and I was only making $60K a year, which is great. And I was grateful for it, but that was a terrible use of money. But I took it to the track. I participated in autocross. I fixed it. That was the only way I could afford it. I had to do the work on it. So there were good things about it. Now I drive a 2006 Prius that I paid $1,800 for, and I feel great. But I think it's because I had that experience with the BMW. It was great. And now I can let it go. So the opposite of that is true also. If there's something that you feel like you're like sort of wanting in a way that maybe feels a little uncomfortable, have it in some way. And maybe you don't buy the sailboat, but you find a friend who has a sailboat, sail on it a few times, see how fun it is, and the maintenance and the upkeep and some of the other parts of it. It's much easier to either go towards the reality of something that you've held and experienced or let go of it. And you can do that without necessarily building up a pile of money so big that you can do anything you want by buying it. There are other ways like relationship. So this was very important for me when I was in the sort of go to work, pay the bills, not have enough money to put a full tank of gas in the car. And that was a period of years. I I couldn't really imagine beyond that, or not much beyond that. And something the financial independence community introduced was the idea of financial independence. But what does that mean? It means that you have enough money that whatever you have invested it in is generating cash flow or is appreciating enough that you can live off of that money for the rest of your life or maybe forever. And initially you might think, oh, well, that must have to be a huge amount of money. It can be if you have a very expensive lifestyle. But if you are able to reduce your expenses, that amount of money can actually not be that big. And even when you're part of the way there, the power that you have to choose which job you do, who you spend your time with, increases exponentially as you get closer. In that world, they call it the first step, FU money. If if your boss goes from being someone that you enjoy going to work with to someone you don't, you have the ability to say no, thank you, or F you. uh, there's different things you can invest in to get there. You can invest in stocks and bonds, crypto. I call those paper assets. You can invest in real estate. You can invest in businesses, and including your own. And for any of you who are involved in nonprofits, this concept doesn't just apply to individuals. It applies to nonprofits also. Most nonprofits, they're in a paycheck to paycheck situation, and there are reasons. But it is possible to accumulate enough funds, just like an individual, so that that nonprofit can maintain its operations indefinitely. And an example of this, not a nonprofit, but professorships at schools like Harvard, MIT, Yale, they don't take tuition from the kids and pay the professor. They accumulate enough donations so that the proceeds of those donations invested pay for that professor's salary and benefits and overhead. So at the time I was at MIT, a professorship meant they had 750K that they invested, and that threw off enough cash flow and capital gains that they could pay for that professor. So this isn't just something that individuals or families can do. This is something organizations can do. And that's an area that I really want to develop because I haven't seen that as developed as it could be in the financial world or the financial independence world. So let's see. We talked at a high level of how to get more. And the reason I did that, because like I said, I didn't want to make you wait, because that's often what people want to know. Each of those topics is a world unto itself. And just like universities have a department of biology and a department of chemistry the mystery school of money has departments as well. And you can decide which area you want to focus on. You want to be really, really good at earning. You want to be really skillful at spending. You want to increase your savings rate to 20, 50, 70%, meaning of the money that you bring in, you're saving 70% of it. Or maybe you want to get really good at investing. With investing, this is one of those areas that the financial industry overcomplicates tremendously. Almost, if you look at mutual fund managers, people who make hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars per year to pick investments that beat the market, over a 1 year period, about half of them manage to do it. Over a 3 year period, it's 20%. Over a 10-year period, it is 3.4%. And over a 20-year period, it is 0.5%. Whereas if you invest in the market as a whole, as in the S&P 500 or a world index fund, you're getting the performance that those individuals who are paid so much are failing to beat, and you're paying less expense ratio. And so with a portfolio of 1 to 4 funds, that's your investment. It's very, very simple. And it's common for me to inherit clients where some advisor trying to justify their fees has put them in 70 different individual stocks in their brokerage account and 12 different mutual funds. So it looks like diversification, each one with a big service fee, in addition to what the advisor is charging them as their fee. And they're doing nothing different than what one index fund like VTI, which is Vanguard's total stock market index fund, or VOO, which is the S&P 500 fund, nothing. And yet they're charging exorbitant fees for it. So it's complexity for the sake of complexity, to justify their fee, to make it hard to get out of. And that's part of the reason I resisted becoming a financial advisor for so long, because I couldn't figure out how to do it in a way that felt ethical and correct, because the business models are not aligned in the interest of the people they're helping. There's still some people who do it, who really do help people, even though the incentives are not aligned. But the conclusion I came to was, I don't take custody of anyone's money. I don't invest for anyone. I teach them how to do it. All that I sell is my advice. The only person I work for is the person I'm giving advice to. There's no kickbacks. There's no soft dollar. There's no favors, nothing. Just the person I'm working for. And they pay me hourly, like a therapist or a lawyer or an accountant. And that felt clean enough for me and direct, and that my incentives were aligned, that if that person felt my help was valuable, then they'd keep paying me. And if not, then why would they? That felt good. So I wanted to give those specifics about investing, because some of you might, okay, what do I do? I want something specific. Again, this is not financial advice, because I don't know your particular situation. But if I were starting and I didn't know anything, I would open a brokerage account at Vanguard, transfer some money from your bank in there, invest in 1 or 2 ETFs, VTI, Victor, Tango, India, is every stock in the US stock market. BND, Bravo, November, Delta, is a bond. I wouldn't call it an index fund, but it's a bond fund that's composed mostly of US treasuries and very high quality corporate stocks. That's a place to start. And you will be doing better, with some mix of those investments than those professional fund managers who, for some reason, are managing to get themselves paid hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars.
I have a question for you that I think is probably a question most people have.
Yeah.
One of the reasons when I was younger, I've still never invested in anything, by the way, for everybody. There's an intimidation because the idea of investment sounds like something that people that already have a lot of money do, right? Mm-hmm. So for people, like maybe that are in this Zoom, that are closer to survival mode but have some extra money, like when you say take some money from your savings and You open like a Vanguard account. What's like the smallest amount of money that makes sense, or does it actually matter? Is it just about getting started with it, or like what do you think?
Yeah, break the seal. I know, Josh, you're going to cringe, but take the action figure out of the package, start playing with it. It doesn't $5, $20. I had a friend. He, was very well paid, but he had never invested outside of the company retirement plan. And it was just what you're talking about, Tony. It was unfamiliar. He didn't know how to do it. And I sat with him until he did it on his phone. It took 7 minutes. Like it was really fast, but it had been years, where he hadn't done it. And with that $5 or $20, it's not necessarily, don't expect it to go from 20 to 100 or anything like that. At that point, you're building familiarity. Like, okay, I moved money from my bank account. It's now at this brokerage. It's in cash. Now I buy this ETF. Now it's invested. And I have this many shares of that ETF. And now it goes up and it goes down. And over short periods of time, like right now, going down, things bounce around all over the place. But if you look over the basically from 1871 to present, the average return, taking inflation into account, is 6.7%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but over a few years, 4, 5, 10 years, it's one of those hockey stick curves where at first it looks like it's not doing anything, and then it doubles, and then it doubles. And so, yeah, with that first investment, just build familiarity with the process. I think that's, and then you can learn more from there. But you say, okay, like you don't have to learn everything about everything to take step one.
Aubrey, if we can pause for a second. Sky asked a question that I think is at the core of a lot of the challenges that quote unquote spiritual people have with money.
Mm-hmm.
Sky wrote, how do we ensure the money that we're investing is going towards things we believe in rather than big pharma, oil, planet destruction, etc. And Sky, thanks for that, because people tell me this all the time. It's like, because you have a heightened level of conscious awareness about the effect that some bad players with money are having on the planet, it can just kind of stop you in your tracks from wanting your money to be in circulation at all. But I found for myself that was kind of an excuse, right, of just not understanding how that world works, right? And so, Aubrey, I'm going to let you take that on, but it's at the core of the reason a lot of people that I've talked to in the spiritual community avoid dealing with money. Not only do they have, whatever their personal relationship with money is, you know, lack survival mode, but whatever it is, sometimes it's, the undeserving thing. But oftentimes what comes up is, well, the reason I don't invest is I don't want my money supporting things that I don't believe in.
Yeah. Thankfully, you're in very good company, Sky. There are many people who, for decades, it's from the late 60s onward, have been working on that. And sort of the umbrella term is environmental social governance, ESG, or it's also called SRI, socially responsible investing. And globally, I think in Europe at present, I think about 30% of all invested dollars are in ESG SRI, but the rate that that's increasing in the United States is greater than the rate that it's increasing in Europe. And I can share that with you. But for example, I was mentioning that brokerage Vanguard, they have an ESG filtered version of the S&P 500, which is called ESGV. And you can look at the criteria that they exclude based on carbon, human trafficking, human impact, environmental damage. It tends to follow the UNHCR criteria, but sometimes they prioritize one or the other. So that's a very accessible place to start. For some people that I work with, that's not good enough. Even with the many choices of ESG filtered funds. So I'm able to do something called direct indexing, where we pick the companies. We'll start out with the list of the 500 and we pick, and maybe we want to take some out, maybe we want to include some. And that's very accessible now. It used to be hard to do. Now on a particular platform called M1 Finance, anyone can make their own index fund effectively with fractional shares of stocks. You don't have to buy, like in the old days, 100 shares of something or 10,000 or whatever. You just set up the percentage you want. We pick them all out. And when your money goes in, it's invested by the percentages that we decide on in the companies that you decide on. So where I start when I'm working with people, I start with ESG investments because their performance has been as good or better than the non-ESG. And the expense ratios are close enough that they don't put me off. So for example, ESGV has an expense ratio of 0.08%, whereas the non-filtered version is 0.04%. So those are both tiny, tiny expense ratios, whereas the other money managers I was describing, their expense ratios on funds I've seen as high as 1.8%. So I want to do the math on that, see how much more, but it's thousands of dollars a year more just for the privilege of having your money invested. So these ESG funds don't have to be costly, and their performance based on his history is as good or better. So that's where I start. Well, the part I wanted to add here before we go into questions, very quickly, where the financial independence community and movement, it's always evolving, but for a while, the primary focus was on independent, which when you're feeling trapped in a job that doesn't feel good some of the time, much of the time, that can be very appealing to have enough money that you don't need to work for anyone ever. And there's a lot of really good things about that. But as many people have reached that, what I've seen happen is the next step is connecting with other people, going on cruises together, starting businesses together, starting communities together. There's an intentional community that's being built in Warner Robins, Georgia. So freedom and independence is a step. Your steps don't have to be these steps, but this is just what I'm observing. And then the beyond connection, the best way I can describe it, the best way I understand it, and this is from my study of the spirit of medicine, much like creation itself, the step beyond connection is play or whim or what you want, whatever you want, for whatever reason. The concept of lila, that the gods created this reality as play, that's what I see for you, for me, as the evolution of money beyond connection.
I'm so glad you brought that up as a final. You know, those of you that have been in retreats with me know that I focus on this concept of the Lila and the Maya so often. And this idea of money fits into that so beautifully because what I often say, and most of you have heard this 100 times, Maya is the illusion of life, the drama, when it has you and you're lost in it. Lila is the same illusion, but you have it and you live it fully. And one of the places where most people don't apply that is money, is what we're talking about. When it comes to money, for most people, the minute it comes up and you're dealing with it, you're plunged into the Maya, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, what Aubrey just said is the key to why we want to do this series and bring it to the community. Money is, as if you look at it, as Aubrey said, is this concentrated life force, the exchange, all these things. I see it, I've learned over the last 10 years, it is actually how I play. Yes, you want to take care of yourself, take care of survival, as you say, safety, all these things. And in the end, though, your attitude can shift from it being this dramatic Maya matrix thing that you have to deal with to just another way that you play the game. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually had the word play on there, and for better or worse, it felt too charged in our language, in our culture, in our present day. So I hope we can change that. But I had the words play, whim, Leela. I was like, my guess is if people see those words, they're going to shut down. They're going to react. So beyond was the word I chose, and then I explained it. So I don't know how that landed for each of you, but I'd be curious. But what I wrote, and I'll say this, and then we'll go into questions. Just a little more about beyond. You might help, you might teach, learn, create, experience, leverage your abilities, your resources, the connections to create more of what you are experiencing, which is consciousness knowing itself.
Well, that's just a friggin' fantastic note before
you.
moving into questions. Were you finished with that thought before we move into questions?
Yes.
Yeah, geez Louise, in treating the spirit of money meetings as another way of it's ceremony. For me, it's so valuable because, as I said when we started, there's hardly a retreat that we do where someone's intention isn't around needing more prosperity, needing abundance in their life. And somehow spiritual people, and I use that in quotation marks, of course, see money as something other than their spiritual life, right? It's like I'm on this spiritual journey and then I have to deal with this money. And one of the things we want to shift is how to bring our relationship with money into our spiritual life. Like you said, into the Leela, into the play. Of course, taking care of ourselves and being responsible, as David says, my fiduciary responsibilities that are mostly self-imposed. We do have to take care of those things, but it doesn't have to be from this place of the opposite of your spiritual life, right? Yeah, it can be included. Okay, we are at our close here. Then I'll have Aubrey close this out.
Thank you, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
Health in the body, peace in the spirit, love in the heart. It is this that we wish for ourselves, and it is this that we wish for all our sisters and our brothers. Please repeat after me. Health in the body.
Health in the body.
Peace in the spirit.
Peace in the
Peace
spirit.
in the spirit.
Love in the heart.
Love in the heart.
Open paths.
Open paths.
Open paths.
Open paths.
Open paths.
Open paths.
Whoosh.
Awesome.
Ah,